So the first thing that I want to talk to you about is I want to talk to you about choosing paper for this project, this radial design project, and really any of the projects during this distance learning. I can't guarantee what kind of supplies you have. All I can hope as your art teacher is that you can at least get a hold of some paper of some sort and pencil. So pretty much every project that I give you during the distance learning is going to be limited to those things, except if you have more, by all means, make your art even, better than kind of what we're restricted to right now, all right? So when I say any paper, I mean any paper, all right? Normally this wouldn't be good in a classroom. I would want you to use the best paper possible, but we're not in the classroom right now. So one, I have copy paper. It's just printer paper, plain paper. It's the kind of stuff that we normally did our sketches on in class. Maybe you only have some colored paper. Maybe it's construction paper even, who knows? But you could use colored paper. I don't care. Or perhaps you don't have any of that and all you have is some lined paper. So that's perfectly fine also. So what I'm going to do for lined paper is I'm going to tear this out of the book there, ideally getting rid of the scrappy things if I can, making it as nice as I possibly can. One other thing that I might want to do with this, because it's got the holes, is I might want to tear those off. If you want to leave them on, you can. Just kind of is a little distracting. But if I want to tear them off, what I might do is I could take a pair of scissors and cut along that red line, or if I don't have scissors, then I can do this tearing thing. I'm not doing a great job here, but if I kind of crease it on one side and then flip it back over the other side, I can use my nails, which are not that terribly long. I can use the side of scissors, though why not just cut with the scissors, or I could use like my pencil here and use that to really get a nice crisp edge there. This allows you to kind of tear it off. It might not end up perfect. It's going to be a little fuzzier looking, but sometimes it works out awesome. So I'm tearing off this edge here just to make it a little bit nicer. Let's start tearing this way. And there I go. So now I have a slightly nicer edge there. If I want, I can make this into a square. I can keep this as a rectangle, and that's true for any of these papers, all right? If you're wanting to use it as a rectangle here, keeping it the same, then a simple radial design is going to be you're folding it in half this way and folding it in half this way so that you have 4 equal rectangles. That's possible. I, however, like to work with squares when I'm working with radial designs, because I just think it looks a little bit more radial. It's a little easier to focus on the kind of central design that's going on. So what you would do if you're trying to make a rectangular piece of paper into a square piece of paper is you're going to take one corner and you're going to fold it across the paper until it is lined up with the edge here. So you can see it's lined up with the edge at the bottom here. This corner is as close to cut in half as I can. Once I've got it lined up and I'm kind of playing around with it and getting it lined up, then I'm going to crease it along the edge here, okay? Now, right now it's still not a square, so what I really need to get rid of is I need to get rid of this bottom section here. So to do that, I'm going to fold along the bottom edge of the triangle here. So now there's a fold down here. You can see my open triangle there, and I can fold it a couple different ways so that I can crease that, or I could get scissors. Doesn't really matter. So I'm just going to do the crease because I'm going to assume maybe you don't have access to scissors. And I'm going to tear that bottom section off. It's not going perfectly. The edge is a little bit bumpy there, but it's okay. And so now I have a square piece of paper. This is just trash or recycling or another, do some sketches on it. So now I have a square, and with the square, if I have it folded into a triangle and then I fold it in half again as a triangle, then I can get 4 sections that are triangular, and the center there is going to be where my radial design rotates from. Whether I do it with lined paper, whether I do that with some clear copy paper and I fold it so that it's the square, that's good. Or I can leave it as a rectangle. So the first thing is going to be option number 1. I'm going to show you 3 options of how you can make a radial design where you're kind of keeping the symmetry and you're trying to really make it look as neat as you possibly can. You can certainly do a radial design where you're just kind of eyeballing and, oh, this looks pretty close to what I had in this other section. And you may end up very successful with that. But certainly doing things like tracing are going to get you a slightly more accurate result if you do them correctly. So first option is I have just a lined paper here that I made into a square in this case, and I drew an image in one of those triangles. In this case, it's just kind of a geometric design here, right? I'm trying to think, especially I like to think about what's happening in the middle here and what I want this to look like. So I tend to kind of accentuate the radial there, and then it's pretty much a symmetrical design, but it's definitely not perfect in its symmetry. So the next thing that I need to do for this particular one is I need to explain the advantages and disadvantages of it. Okay, so the advantages to doing option number 1, you don't need any other materials. You need a pencil and you need paper. If you have some other materials, great, but you do not need them, all right? You don't need extra paper, you don't need a window, you don't need tape or anything. You get nice dark lines in a lot of these triangles, whereas some of the other options kind of make lighter lines. And you can do more difficult work and details on something like this than maybe some of the others that you have to trace a little bit more. This is less likely that you have to trace, but it's not a perfect system, so you may have to trace, all right? But it could be a little less tracing than some of the other options. Disadvantages to option number 1 are that you're going to have thick and very heavy pencil, at least in some of the sections, and that's going to be really hard to erase if for some reason you didn't want to see that dark of an edge. It's going to be there, right? And another thing is because some of your sections are going to be so dark and kind of thick, it's more likely that you're going to kind of smear the graphite on your picture. So just so you know the disadvantages of this one. I think a lot of you will probably choose this one just because it doesn't require other materials and may seem easier for this particular one. But I show you multiple examples and options because these options that I show you, yeah, right now we're talking about a radial design, but you could use any of these options for other types of drawing assignments that you do or artwork that you create. And they may not all work for every kind of problem that you have in creating your art. So I'm giving you a variety, all right? So first one, I have this, I made it into a square, my choice, and in one of those I drew my design. The next thing that I need to do is I need to really, really darken this design with pencil. Can't be any other material. I have to have dark pencil for this one. So right now, you're going to see me darken all of my pencil lines. All right, so I made that as dark as I possibly can, trying not to rip through the paper, even though I need to push very hard because I don't want to ruin my overall design. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to be folding this across. So I'm going to fold so that the pencil is on the inside and it's going to be pushed up against one of the other triangular spaces. It doesn't really matter which direction you go at this point. So I'm going to fold it in half and I can see my design here, even if you can kind of see it there in the video. And then it's up against a different blank triangle. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pencil mechanical and I just need an area that can put pressure. I could use my nails, I could use part of the scissors handles here or the kind of dull side of the scissors here. The point is that I have a fairly small surface area. I don't need to be drawing right now. I just need that pressure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it and I'm going to scribble anywhere I can see my drawing. I don't have to perfectly trace it or anything. I'm just kind of scribbling over wherever any of those lines may be. as I'm doing that, I may want to kind of test and see how well it went. I can start to see that that has transferred into the other place. If it's way too light or I can't see a section, that tells me that I need to go back and I need to press possibly harder. Or maybe I didn't put enough graphite and push enough hardness when I was retracing. I can also do my nails if I want, since I have a little bit of nail right now. And you can kind of play around with whatever you think. Ooh, maybe I'll use the like edge of the Sharpie cap here, and I can do some there. All right, I'm pretty happy with that. It's a little bit lighter than I would normally do if I were going to be for sure finishing this, but you can see that it is transferred over there. Another thing that you'll see in some of these is use of like dots to make sure that they're transferring in the right spot. But because this is all one piece of paper and I'm not using other pieces of paper, I don't have to worry about trying to make sure I'm putting it the right way. It's already the right way. Now, I'm going to go into the other one that's right next to it over here, and I'm going to fold it that way so that, again, the pencil drawing that I originally did is pressed up against an all-new blank triangular side. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I folded my paper a little off. I'm going to do the same thing that I did for that last section. Okay, so I'm going to come over here. My son's trying to peek in the video there. And I'm going to use, again, something kind of dull, but has a small pressure point to kind of trace over wherever my pencil lines are. I'm going to check it again to see how well it transferred. It's a little bit light in some areas. So then I can refold it and I can kind of try to touch up some of those areas. Now I have it in 3 different sections. Okay, the next section is a little bit harder. Now if you did it as a square here, it can be pretty easy. You can just kind of fold it in half here. You'll get another crease, but it'll be the last triangle against the original triangle in that case, and you can do it again. If it was with the rectangular paper, it gets a little bit more difficult because you can't kind of flip it over nicely that way because the sections aren't even. So this is what I did for rectangular, and in this case you're having to fold one of your kind of lighter sections already on top of that and hoping that it transfers. So this is a case where you may have to trace again. You may have to, so this is my original, this is one of my like flipped over copies here, but I may need to trace over these lines to make them dark so that then they will transfer over into this section. You can see I didn't really trace over, so it's even lighter in that particular section. All right, so there are advantages to having the square here where you can just create another fold and just do the rubbing again, so there's absolutely no tracing that would have to be done. If you left it as a rectangle, you may have to trace one of these sections again so that it has enough pencil, enough graphite that can transfer into the one rectangle that it's not currently at.